Hello, welcome. You're listening to Season 4 of Narcolepsy Navigators, brought to you by Naps for Life CIC. Narcolepsy Navigators is a podcast for raising awareness of these fascinating illnesses through a deep dive into the lives and individuals living with narcolepsy, idiopathic hypersomnia, and Klein-Levin syndrome. I'm Kelly Boga, the founder of Naps for Life CIC, and welcome to our stories. Hi everyone, welcome to Narcolepsy Navigators. I'm Kelly, your host. I have narcolepsy type 1, and today we're here with Vincent Arthur. He is from the United States. He is a race car driver, and welcome to his story. So Vincent, how was your day?
Day's been going pretty good. We've got about 2:30 in the afternoon here, so a little bit of a time difference, but still enjoying the afternoon.
That's good. My day's been okay. A friend that has narcolepsy from Australia is doing a tour around Europe, and London is his first stop. And so I just met up with him and had dinner and was just catching up. He came on Thursday. I wanted to see him earlier, but I had a fall a week ago. I had catalepsy and I messed up my ankle. So I wasn't able to go into the city and walk on down, do the sightseeing and things like that. But it was nice to catch up with him and have dinner. Yeah.
I just got to catch up with him. Is your ankle doing all right?
Yeah. I think I need to have an x-ray probably Tuesday because it's still hurting and it's been over a week now.
How often do you have those episodes of cataplexy?
Like every day, but I haven't had a fall in a while.
Really?
I'm not one in public like that in probably 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, just one of those things. But yeah, it's so funny because it's just, I don't even remember. Usually, like, laughter is my biggest trigger and stress and tiredness. I can't say that any of those things was happening. I was just like on my way to college. I literally just got out of my house, turned the corner, and then 1 minute I was up and the next minute on the floor. I don't remember anything in between.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was a hard fall because I'm still feeling, even not on my ankle, the other side of my leg, I'm still feeling pain now. And it's over a week later, I'm still in pain. So it was quite a fall. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it all ends up all right.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Maybe some physio or something is needed. I don't know. I'm going to ask you, Vincent, if you could introduce yourself. What is your name? How old you are, if you feel comfortable? What state in the US you're residing in? Yeah. And what type of narcolepsy you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Vincent Arthur. I have type 2 narcolepsy. I'm 21 years old and I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina, although I'm originally from Manchester, Maryland.
So is Charlotte to Maryland, are they far from each other?
From my current house to where I grew up is roughly 500 miles, so 300 kilometers-ish.
So that's a bit of a drive.
Yeah, it's 7 hours. It's not that bad.
That's long. That's like going from London to Cornwall. That's far.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've talked with a couple people from like Europe and from the UK, and like the perception of distance is really, it's a lot different because 500 miles to me is nothing. But like you just said, that's still a lengthy drive. Where my travel to work is 35 miles up the road. And like in the UK, I forget who I was talking to, but that's a drive across the country almost. So it's really interesting to see how that differs between over here and where you guys are at.
That's true. I always have to remind myself that America's a continent and it's not a country. Yeah.
Yeah.
What year did you get diagnosed?
So I got diagnosed in 2023, the very beginning of it, but I think my symptoms would go back probably to 2019 is when I started experiencing symptoms. And I didn't really know what it was, and I couldn't really attribute it to anything besides like the antidepressants that I had started at the time. And being that young and really uneducated about what it was or anything, I thought it was just the medicine. I thought that's what was causing me to have really bad brain fog and just to be really tired all the time. But after a while, and it went on, and I went to a bunch of different doctors, and they were all stumped about what it was. It took up until I got a sleep study done for them to really understand. And the doctor looked at the results from the sleep study and immediately was like, oh, okay, you have narcolepsy. And up to that point, it's really nothing that I had considered just because I don't have cataplexy. I feel if I did have type 1, I feel like we could have diagnosed it a little earlier. But just because it was type 2 and my symptoms were mainly just brain fog and the other symptoms were like ADD, ADHD based, it was really hard for doctors to figure out. We're trying medicines. Why isn't this working? So it was a tough road. But once I got diagnosed, it was almost a relief to figure out okay, this is what was wrong.
So you mentioned brain fog. So what about excessive daytime sleepiness? You weren't having a lot of that?
I feel like I've always been like really tired during the day, but I've never been one to take naps. Like naps have never really worked for me. Post my diagnosis, I think I've had a little bit different view on naps. I really try to take them for what they are, like 15, 20 minutes, just refresh, reset, and then go. Where it's like beforehand, a nap to me, I'd wake up, not know where I was, like just super disoriented. Your stereotypical nap. So I wouldn't take them that often, and I just fight through it. But the brain fog was really bad because it really hurt like my sociability. And I think circumstances really made it to where it didn't really have that big of an effect on my daily life until I came to college, mainly just because my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I had set myself up really good that in my junior and senior year, socially and the stuff that I was involved in, I could just coast through it and not really have to think about it. Like it was just something that I did. But once I came to college and I didn't know anybody when I came here. When I really had to start making a whole new friend group and really getting out socially, it was really draining for me and it was tough. Plus, I was away from home and I didn't have an idea of what was going on. So that just made it really rough. That was when I made it rough, and it was a wake up to, okay, something's got to go on here.
So it's when you got to college that you really started to feel like something's definitely wrong.
It wasn't that it was wrong. It was just,
or something definitely doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it was just really hard to make friends, and a lot of the times social situations I kind of started avoiding, and small talk it still is really tough. So it always takes me a while. It takes me a while to warm up to people, and that can also give people like the perception that I'm like annoyed or disinterested or I don't like them or something like that. So I've always kept a small circle, but it's really hard to expand past that just because it takes a lot of mental energy as is to form those connections.
I agree with that. That's so true. And did you find not having a support system at college also made it a bit harder?
Not necessarily. I think my support system is really good. I'm really close with my mom, and my mom, she works for Johns Hopkins. She has an understanding that not many other people do in terms of just like the medical backgrounds. I stay in close contact with her, and so we would always call and stuff like that. And so it wasn't necessarily the support system that was hard. It was more or less just like me going about pursuing an engineering degree and having to deal with all of those credits and those classes, as well as trying to balance with social life and all the other things. It was just very mentally draining.
So what was the tipping point that got you to the sleep doctor to have the test?
So I think my mom was doing some research, and she was like, it could be like narcolepsy, but even her perception of narcolepsy was just type 1. Like she didn't really know that there was a type 2, so she didn't think it was that. But there was another, I can't remember the name of it, but there was another type of disorder that could deal with sleeping. And I remember what it was. I like twitch a lot and I kick a lot. And so my mom also does that. She found a provider down here that was able to do a sleep study, and it was covered by insurance and all that. So she was like, I really do this, and I know you also do this. So like maybe you have restless-leg syndrome or something else like that. So just go get a sleep study done. We'll figure it out. And so that's what initially led me to go get the sleep study. And then that's what made me realize that I had narcolepsy to begin with.
So you said once you were finally diagnosed, you felt a sense of relief. Were you then able to get any recommendations at college?
Yeah, so my neurologist down here, once he looked at the chart and was like, oh, you have narcolepsy, he prescribed a medication for me to take. And I'm still on it like now. It's a combination that works for me. So that was about as far as like the recommendations go. I've tried a couple things, but besides what I'm on right now, it hasn't necessarily worked.
If you don't mind, what are you taking right now?
So I'm taking Jornay PM as well as Vyvanse.
Okay. I don't know those two as drugs that they have over here. I haven't heard those. I've heard other people speak about them from the States, but I haven't personally had those two myself.
Yeah, they're pretty common. Jornay is new, but like the base medicine in Jornay is
Jornay meant to be a stimulant, or? Yeah,
they're both stimulants. I was on Vyvanse when I was in high school just because like they couldn't figure out what the brain fog was, so they attributed that to ADD, ADHD. That's what like Vyvanse is a common medicine for those two conditions. That was used to originally treat it, and then the Jornay on top of the Vyvanse was for the narcolepsy.
Once you started on medication, could you feel the difference?
Yeah, I think so. I think it helps me stay concentrated longer. There's still a point in the day where I feel both of them wear off. The brain fog comes back, and after that point I know there's not a ton of meaningful work that I'm going to be able to accomplish, so I really have to take advantage of the window where both of my medicines are working. But yeah, going from taking it to not taking it if I run out or something like that, it's insane to think that I used to live that way. Like it is rough.
Asking yourself, how was I functioning like without it?
Yeah, it's like I'll have 15 minutes of okay, I can do this, feel the way that I felt like before all of my symptoms kicked in and whatnot. But then immediately after, it's falling back asleep, or it's just like brain fog and I can't do anything. And it's really frustrating, especially to know that I, at one point in my life, didn't have the symptoms like that. Like a couple times, that's been really tough for me to just accept that the narcolepsy is not going to go away. So I'm never going to get to the point where, you know, where I was before I started experiencing symptoms. I have a combination of medicines that works for me and allows me to live life the best that I can. And it's always looking at the silver linings there. But sometimes it does get tough. I almost feel like sometimes I'm put in a situation where I either have to prioritize like social interaction, or I have to prioritize like brain power thinking. Like when I'm at work, sometimes like in the morning when like I could dive into a conversation with somebody, I'll not necessarily cut it short, but not put like a ton of brain power towards it, which could affect that relationship. But I know that I'm reserving that brain power for
later in the day that you really need it for.
yeah. So that gets a little frustrating. And sometimes I'm just like, I really wish that I could still just put my brain power towards anything instead of having.
You wish you could put your brain power towards the fun stuff, but sometimes you need to keep it for the very important activities that's coming up.
And I have to sit at 60% power like all day. So it's almost like charging a phone. It's if you have a really bad battery, yeah, you can play that mobile phone and you play that mobile game or do some streaming or whatnot. But you know, your battery, like you don't have a charger all day. So you gotta really take care of that battery. You can't use it all morning and then you're at 30% and you still got like the rest of the day to go. You got to be really careful. And that's a box that I find myself in a lot, and it's frustrating.
I think that's a really good analogy. A friend of mine, Anna, in Spain, she's the one that told me that she uses the mobile phone instead of way to explain to people. And she found that they understand that more. Went back to college to do hairdressing last year. I explained to teenagers in using that theory, and they really understood it because the teenagers are always on their phone all the time. And people understand that concept of if you start the day, you wake up and you start the day on 50%, then you take your medication and then you've gone up to 75. But then, you know, how to explain spoon theory using the concept of you had a shower, now you're at 60%. You had to take the bus to college, now you're at you've done 1 hour of class, you're already at 50%. If you continue like this, by the time the day is ended at college, you could be on 10%. You still got to get home. And how you're not going to fall asleep on the bus at 10%. You're shaking and trying to keep yourself awake. By the time you get home, you're on 1%. You crash.
Yeah. The way I give myself those extra like 10% bumps during the day is just an energy drink or two. I have a really good relationship with a couple representatives over at Red Bull, so I always have that be around. My roommate works at Monsters, so there's plenty of stuff that's always flowing in the house that I'll use to just get through the day, really. But yeah, it's tough having to manage my energy when I want to just be expelling it and doing, you know, what I enjoy doing.
What about your friends? Do you find that they understand?
I think so. I mean, it's definitely affected my relationships. Like I had mentioned earlier, like small talk's really tough for me. So it's like I'll normally keep small groups. And if I see one of my friends walking in public or whatnot, it takes a lot for me to be like, if I'm walking one way and he's walking the other and we're going to pass each other, it's like that whole time leading up to it, I'm like trying to figure out like what I'm going to say, like when to say it. And then it's like I'm thinking too much. So then when I do say it, it's either too late or it's wrong. It just compounds itself and creates a lot of anxiety for me, which is super unfortunate because it used to be the type of person I could talk to anybody, where now it's getting into a conversation is really tough. But like once I'm in a conversation, I can keep it. But I'll start to avoid conversation and avoid people altogether just because it takes a lot of initial energy to get that conversation going.
Definitely. I have a t-shirt that I made from a meme that says, "I'm awake, please respect my privacy in this difficult time." And I said to people, like, seriously, you don't understand. Every hour that we're awake, it's so precious. And like business people will say time is money. Like every waking hour is precious. Don't do anything silly to waste that time, because you're wasting what is really precious time. If I wasted time with you that could have been doing something really beneficial with someone else, is that I feel like you've stolen that time away and you can't get it back. Once the time has been taken, you can't catch it back up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I try to create as many like brainless, I don't want to say brainless, but a lot of like autopilot behaviors just so I can save that. I normally eat the same breakfast every day. I'll eat the same dinner for a week just because that's not a choice that I have to make. Like it's just there. And then at that point, I can not switch my brain off, but I can just, and then just go about it. And then when I'm done or whatever, just, and then get back to what I was doing. Save that energy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you said you're studying engineering?
Yeah, I'm studying mechanical engineering with a concentration in motorsports.
How did you get into that field?
So I grew up, like my family would watch NASCAR on Sundays and they'd also watch football. But at a certain point, my mom always tells a story where it's my love for football was here and my love for racing was here. And then she could like visibly see it like overtake football. And it got to the point where I was watching racing on Sunday instead of football. And in 2015, my favorite driver growing up was Jeff Gordon. He was retiring, so it was his last year. And I knew that it was my last opportunity to see him race. So I just dove like headfirst into it. I was watching all like the pre-shows during the week. I was watching like every little detail of the race. I was watching the post-race. I was watching whatever I could get my hands on, really. And it really just developed into a passion. And I learned a lot throughout that period. And even when Jeff retired, my love for the sport was still there. Like that passion, that commitment, that dive head first, it just stayed. And I knew that's what I wanted. I loved being around the sport so much that when it came time to try to figure out what I was going to do, I was like, I don't really know, but I want to be around the sport. So in 2018, I guess my high school was an hour away from my house. So a lot of the friends that I made in high school, they lived really far. So a lot of the times on the weekend, I wouldn't really do too much. I played football, so we normally have a game on a Friday or a Saturday. So that took most of my social time when everybody else was going out. So I started sim racing on an online racing simulator called iRacing in 2018. So that's what I would do on the weekends. And my parents really never understood it. My mom, at one point, she was just like, you know what? You seem really interested in this. I would talk about it. She's like, you seem really interested in this. Let's just open it up. Because everybody else thinks it's just a silly video game or whatnot. But my mom was like, you know what? You're really interested in this? Tell me about it. Tell me what you got going on. Let me learn. But she was a big proponent of it and allowed me to really do it. And I fell in love with the driving aspect of it. And I still watch the races on the weekend. And I made it pretty high up, not having any connections on the esports side of things. And then I was contacted by Travis Manning. And at the time he owned, I can't remember the name of the team. It went under shortly after I joined and then got rebranded. But he reached out and was like, hey, I'm the owner of this esports team. We're looking for a new driver and we've had our eyes on you for a little while. Would you like to come aboard? And I didn't even know that world existed. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. And then that team went under, but it got rebranded to Great Lakes Motorsports, which is now Triad Racing Enterprises. And we just went to work. I got teamed up with some really smart people, some really accomplished people who knew what they were doing in terms of setup building, race plans, all that other stuff that you would traditionally see in a real life race team, but it was on the simulator. So I started building setups and racing the open leagues and then the road to pro and the professional series. And I made it pro in 2020, thanks to the help of everybody at Great Lakes and now Triad. And it's very humbling to look back and to think about where I started versus where I'm at now. COVID did a lot for it, actually. I think that's one of the good things to come out of COVID was when everything shut down, a lot of the racers, they started racing online. Very regularly, I was racing against Tony Stewart and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and like the biggest names within NASCAR. Like I was racing them week in and week out. And so that was really cool for me as a fan to be like, hey, I'm racing against these people I grew up working or that I grew up like watching on TV. So that was really cool. And I know NASCAR is not huge in Europe, but like one of the guys that I raced with that I didn't even know I was racing with until after the race was Fernando Alonso. And after that, I was like, you know what, that's pretty damn cool to race with a Formula One world champion. But yeah, so that did a lot. And then when it came time, when school started back up and it came time to choose a college, me and my mom had sat down and we realized there were two ways into the sport. You either grew up around it or you went and got your engineering degree and then you went in that way. Obviously, I didn't grow up around it. There wasn't a lot of racing where I was from, asphalt racing at least. There was a lot of dirt racing, but it's just not something I ever really got into. So we researched colleges with a mechanical engineering degree with the motorsports concentration, and the University of North Carolina at Charlotte was the big one that came up. The college has had a lot of people graduate with an engineering degree and go into the sport. We figured might as well get down into the area, get my degree, and then see what can come about. And I always wanted to be a driver, but I didn't really have the funding to be able to go do it because it's very expensive. but I had the pedigree online, but it took a while for people to equate the two. So I went to Charlotte for college, and I think it was my sophomore year, in the spring of my sophomore year. My dad, actually, who is still up in Maryland, he went to the gym one morning, and he was wearing a Charlotte sweatshirt, and a big guy walks up to him, and he's like, "Hey, what's your connection?" And my dad thought like he stole his equipment or something. So like he was a little like off edge and was like, "Oh, I didn't expect you to ask that." But he was like, "Oh, my son goes there for engineering." And the guy's, "Oh, that's cool. What's he want to do?" And my dad's, "Oh, he wants to be a NASCAR crew chief." And the guy who walked up to him just happened to be the former CFO of Ray and Brothers Racing, which is a NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series team. And so he was like, "Hey, give him my number, have him reach out, and we'll set something up. We'll see what we can do." So then my dad calls me and he sends me his number and whatnot, and I give him a call. And 2 weeks later, I got an engineering internship with the NASCAR team.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was it. I'm pretty strong in faith, but that's my testimony.
That's God right there. It's just literally divine intervention, just kicking everything together.
A lot had to happen for that one scenario. It
Yeah.
wasn't my dad's normal time going to the gym. Like a lot of things had to align, and then luckily it did. So then I got the internship with him or with them, and then I started going to the races and whatnot. And my boss at the time, he started to see, he understood the online racing pedigree. So he realized what I was able to do on the sim. So then he was like, "Okay, like you're going to be our sim guy." So I'd set up all the simulators. I'd work with the drivers. I'd plug our setups as close as I could into iRacing so that our drivers could get laps. And then I'd mentioned to him that I wanted to go late model racing, which I guess is like Formula 4 if I'm equating to European racing. But I was like, I want to go late model racing. And he's, "Oh, okay." And then 2 weeks later, a late model, like fully race ready, just showed up in the shop. So then I asked my boss one day when we were racing up in Pocono, I was like, "Hey, like I know we're running that late model in a couple weeks. Do you mind if could I drive it?" He's like, "Yeah, no, absolutely." I got to go and test that a couple weeks after the race was over, and I did really well in that test. And off that, one of the team owners who was there like walked up to me. He was like, "Hey, if you find some funding, let me know. Like you got like this ride's yours if you want it." So it took me a while to find the partners to be able to put together the money to go do this past season. I started a partnership with Wake Up Narcolepsy for all of my esports stuff. And I also started piecing together like actual sponsors to go racing, and we were able to do it. And we've been pretty successful, especially for a guy who's never been in a real race car prior to the test and prior to the race.
How did they feel about you racing, like when you told them that you had narcolepsy? Now that you wouldn't be on the Sims and you were going to be in person, in real life car situation.
I guess it's one of those things where I didn't really tell them necessarily. Like obviously Wake Up Narcolepsy was a partner, so they were on the car. But in terms of like me telling them that I had narcolepsy, it's one of those things where I didn't really want to say too much because I didn't want the crash clause or like any of the liability stuff to like up the price, and then now I can't race. Because I know for me, narcolepsy is super, super misunderstood. So whenever I told people I race, they were like, "But don't you like fall asleep? Like, how can you do that with narcolepsy?" And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to break. That's what the stigma that I'm trying to break by going and doing this. Just because for me, I don't have issues with driving. I'm in a race car. It's like running a marathon. I don't really think I could fall asleep if I wanted to. My heart rate just like stays at 190 the whole time. So it's one of those things I didn't mention until like afterwards. And then they're like, "Oh, okay." Then they don't have that stigma anymore because it's, "Oh, I didn't know this kid had narcolepsy. He just went out and did a full day of running and then ran a race and did well." It's like he didn't fall asleep once or doze off or whatever. It's, "Oh, okay, that's not something that I should be attributing to narcolepsy anymore."
Do they give you any accommodations at work?
No.
If you needed to have a nap or anything like that?
Not really. Nothing that I go out of my way for. The Ray and Brothers Racing, I was with them up until a couple weeks ago. And then this past week on the 7th, I started a new job with Tricon Garage, which is they're compete for a championship in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. And if I get these opportunities, and where I was at with Ray and Brothers, they were a small team. So we worked a lot of really long hours. So I always make the comment, I did not choose a very accommodating profession for somebody with a sleep disorder, because there were often times where I was working 7 a.m. till 4 a.m. or 3 a.m., 2 a.m. So like I was working really long hours. And at that point, I would just do what I could. I just fight through it as much as I can. Energy drinks, make sure I'm on my feet, just doing what I can to still be useful and productive and everything like that. But I think the one thing that I do that I think helps is my trouble area is like early afternoon. We start at 7. So once you hit 1:30, 2 o'clock to about 3 or 4, that's a really like rough area where it can get like really hard to concentrate and keep working. So during my lunch, sometimes I'll take a 10, 15-minute nap, just a little bit of a refresh, just take the edge off for the afternoon, and then that'll keep me going through the afternoon, and I don't have that like lull anymore. So I think as far as naps, I think that's the only really thing that I will do whenever I have the opportunity.
I know there's lots of people who have narcolepsy who can drive, and people who don't have sometimes find that a bit confusing, but it is a very individual thing. The symptoms when it comes to driving, some people are so alert once they're behind the wheel, and then there are people like myself who just getting into a car just makes you super sleepy, but the opposite with other people, and so driving hasn't been an issue for them.
Yeah, like I find myself more comfortable behind the wheel than I like on my feet.
Oh wow, that's very cool. You had said that Wake Up Narcolepsy had sponsored, so what did that entail, and do you think did help with raising awareness?
Yeah, I think it absolutely did. So I had reached out to them over the off season. So like I think it was this last December, maybe late November. And I was like, hey, my name is Vincent Arthur. I'm a race car driver. I was diagnosed with narcolepsy type 2 earlier this year. I think I have a platform that hasn't really been tapped in to raise awareness for narcolepsy. I think we could really do something cool here. And they reached out and they were like, yeah, absolutely. Let's set up a meeting. Let's introduce you to everybody here. Let's figure out what we can do. They're still building up as an organization. So they were like, we can't fund too much, but we really want to make sure that we help each other grow our bases, and then maybe we'll have some extra partners that hop on, and then we can get Wake Up Narcolepsy as like the full primary sponsor. So we sat down and we were like, okay, how can we do this? And then I have a pretty big platform through sim racing still. So we worked out a deal where they're my primary sponsor over there for a majority of the races this season. I think we have 6 or 7 wins on the year. So we've been able to have a lot of success with them, which has been great. And when we were putting together the late model deal, I still knew that as far as like funding wise, they weren't going to be able to do much. So for me, it was just super important to get them on the car, because that in and of itself, that's going to be the motivating factor. That's going to be the thing where people are like, look at this guy. We want to help. We want to help Wake Up Narcolepsy, and we want to help Vincent in his racing career. So for me, it was just really important to get them on the car just to get the story out there. Because if I never race again, at least that's out there. Hey, this guy's narcolepsy and he drives race cars. That's what he does.
It'll go down in history.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the biggest thing I want to do, was just be like, you have narcolepsy. Don't let this limit you. You can do whatever you want, including driving race cars if you wanted to. So that race in and of itself, the publicity we got out of that, and the people who saw it, it's done a lot. It's done a lot for bringing attention to the company and also to my career. So I think it was a really good first step into raising awareness, and I think there's a very bright future for the two of us within the motorsports industry.
That's good. I like that. I like that message, because when you had a picture with Joshua, and for people who don't know who I'm talking about, Joshua, the football player, and he recently retired, and so I saw you at a gala or something, or a dinner after. Then the caption was, "Nice to meet another narcoleptic," and I was like, huh. And then I click into your page, and then it says about race car driving. I was like, no way he can have narcolepsy and be a racer. Maybe he just likes Josh. That's all it is. And then I looked some more and stuff, and then I was like, oh wow. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I didn't realize you could do that. Have narcolepsy. I didn't know that they would accept it, or that would be okay. And I thought, no, I need to speak to this person. That's like really fascinating and good for anyone out there who has type 2 and would like to try something different. Race car, it's not out of the cards for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like people to know about you or about advocacy, like a takeaway that you want to share?
I think the biggest takeaway that I want people to hold on to is narcolepsy is not a limiting factor in your life. Like it's something we have, and sometimes it could be hard to manage, but it's not something that's going to dictate what you can and can't do in life. So if you want to be a lawyer, go be a lawyer. If you want to be an engineer, go be an engineer. If you want to be like an astronaut or race car driver or like a doctor, like whatever you want to do, narcolepsy is not going to limit you. Work hard, do what you can, do whatever you need to do to be able to live your life to the fullest, but don't let narcolepsy be a limiter, because at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want.
It might take you longer, but yes, or you might have to go in a different path. I always say to people, they always say, think out I always encourage people to do that. Say things might take you longer or it might be more difficult, but sometimes you really have to think completely out of the box. And then you find the easier paths than if you're following like the standard way of doing things. You could be making life harder. And if you really broaden your horizon and think differently, you'll see more opportunities open up.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was really nice talking to you, Vincent, and learning about your story. I see you have a bright future ahead of you. I'm glad that you've started advocating so early in your career. I think that's really amazing. And you're going to give a lot of young kids hope that they can do something different in their life. And I think that's really special. So when we end, we like to say happy napping, everyone, as the thing at the end. So we wish you all the best in your uni and your engineering degree and also in your racing. Can you tell people where they can find you, like on socials and stuff?
Absolutely. First, I just want to thank you for having me on the show. It's my first podcast. It was really cool to be invited to one. So you can find me on Instagram at Vincent A55. You can also find me on Twitter, same handle. You can find me on Facebook. Really, whatever social media, I try to keep the same username, just Vincent A55. All of my information will be there, and all of my updates for whatever I'm doing and whatever announcements I have, they'll be on there.
That's cool. Thank you. Happy napping, everyone.
Napping.
Narcolepsy Navigators is excited to announce our new Patreon and merch store. You can choose to support us monthly via Patreon and receive bonus content from our advocacy and medical series, as well as a shout out on the show. Subscribing to our Patreon will allow you to have access to Narcolepsy Navigators Discord server, where you can chat with other navigators, find support, and ask questions to be featured in future bonus episodes. Higher tier supporters can also receive Patreon merch, or if a monthly subscription is not in your budget, you can check out even more merch on our website, www.naps4life.com. Narcolepsy Navigators is produced by a team of volunteers working for the Naps for Life CIC, which is a non-profit group dedicated to improving the lives of people with sleep disorders through community action. You can help grow our podcast and join our sleep disorder support group by visiting the website www.napsforlife.com. If you or someone you know has a sleep disorder and would like to share your story on Narcolepsy Navigators, please email us at narcolepsynavigators@gmail.com. You can also support us by donating at the website. Happy napping, everyone.